Hi, class. Dan Goodison here, Developmental Psychology. A discussion post on the bioecological model, tying that in with Christianity, um, was the focus of my discussion post for this week. So, um, all the models we talked about this week, the bioecological model, the sociocultural view from Vygotsky, and even the research paper by Benson. Really, the focus is person and context, right? So the bioecological model, the biological part is, you're dealing with the biological potential of the individual. The ecological part is you're dealing with how living things interact with each other, and so it describes the process by which a child and the context in which it lives directly affect each other. Um, During frequent interactions, and these interactions, the book says, are the engine of development. For Vygotsky, um, development is not just about the individual. It's not just the individual and certain social things that happen to the individual. Development is about the individual with social things that happen to them embedded in a context. So again, the context really matters. And the Benson study went on to say how, um, children are embedded within a complex pattern of social institutions, and families don't exist in isolation. Talked about these external and internal assets, where a person can have internal assets, but obviously we need the context, the culture, the society to provide certain um, external assets if we're going to develop properly. In terms of the bioecological model, what might be the most important of the systems prevented? When you talk about a person in context philosophy, it is kind of hard to imagine that one of the four would stand out as most important. But I thought I'd talk about uh, the macro system in particular, because it is the one system that all of them, but you can't control the macro system. You can't set the stage for wider culture on its own. But it ends up being really important. This is where belief systems are identified, lifestyles are defined, opportunities are given, um, that guide the activity of the lower systems. And in a lot of ways, when I think of the macro system, I think about the idea of developing a mission statement. One of the first things you do with where do I want to go, what do I want to be, say, well, sit down and put the mission statement together, the big picture. And that's really what the macro outlook looks like. It's this place where its culture's beliefs and ideals and lifestyle are identified and labeled. So we can't affect the overall mission of the macro system, but I see it as really important. And in an ideal position, I think it is critical to this person and context scenario. Um, the other aspect of the question, the importance of children within society, and potentially even relating that to the Christian mission or the church. When I think about person and context, I thought I would translate it to another word, and that's collectivism. Both Bronfenbrenner and Vygotsky developed theories with the backdrop of um, communism and Marxist principles. It is the opposite of individualism. Individuals are seen as part of the collective whole. Individuals have responsibility to contribute to the whole. Self-directed activity and commitment to a larger social unit based on sharing cooperation and support. And so it very much looks like what person in context is shooting to accomplish, right? So person in context is not just describing something, but it's actually describing the ideal form of development involves the interplay of a person within a context. And so it very much looks like collectivism in terms of its ideal. This actually aids in child development. There's an encouragement for all to participate in the labor of tools. Vygotsky talked about the use of tools, whether that's language, a machine, or a toy. Responsibility for adults and people of higher competencies to share knowledge. That sounds a lot like scaffolding, challenging belief systems. All phenomena constantly undergo change and move towards a synthesis of conflicting ideas, and this dialogue takes place within a society. Um, that's what was referred to as dialectical change. Um, Collectivism kind of is, in some ways, is that whole assisting feature of the zone of proximal development. You're not only identifying that zone, but you have that assistance of scaffolding where society, people of greater competencies, are stepping in to help develop you and maximize your growth. So, language development, which Vygotsky himself thought was the most important, all takes place in a context like that. The opposite of it, individualism, you can be whoever you want to be, you're special, you should not have to deal with them or that. You have rights, they're wrong, they can starve before I give up any of my extras. They brought this upon themselves. That's somewhat of the opposite. And what I don't want to do is just present a philosophical way of life as a side tangent. I guess what I see in collectivism is it very much looks like the bioecological model in the sociocultural model in terms of how they present it as the ideal form of development. And so when I relate that to the church, I think the church in scripture actually modeled something that looks just like this. I think the church does a pretty good, in a smaller system level at least, um, of facilitating this type of collective atmosphere where older adults are investing in and younger children, those of more competencies, are scaffolding those with less competencies, where where there is dialogue and debate in a positive way that helps with concept formation and language development. And so I think the church does a pretty good job and should always strive for a model that is a bioecological model, a model that understands that that is a person and context that really matters. And so I think that that's something the church can continue to do, strive to do. And I think that this idea of person and context looks a lot like collectivism in its ideal. And I think the church is a good model for that, and should make that something that is something they strive to in the future. Thank you.